when we're dividing decimal numbers, um, what we do is we divide as if both what we call the dividend, which is the number that we're dividing, and the divisor, which is what the number is being divided by, are both whole numbers, except we pay attention to where the decimal point is. So if I'm going to write this as a long division, I would write it as 2, and we're dividing 2 into 8.74. And so I just start off and I say, okay, how many times does 2 go into 8? Well, 2 goes into 8 4 times. And if I do that division, or sorry, do that subtraction, there's nothing left over. Keep your decimal point, bring down the 7. Now, since my decimal point is right here, that's where my decimal point stays. How many times does 2 go into 7? Well, 2 doesn't go into 7 evenly, but 2 times 3 is 6, which is a little less than 7. Subtract that, I have 1 left over, bring down my 4. Now really that would represent 14/100ths. But we just go ahead and we keep dividing like they're whole numbers. 2 goes into 14 7 times. Nothing left over, so there's no remainder. So my answer would be 4.37. Now, rounding. Just a quick reminder on rounding. Remember the way that our base 10 system works. We have tens, ones. Then after the decimal point, we don't have anything called ones or units, but we start off with tenths. So there's tenths, then hundredths, then thousandths, and 10,000ths. And you usually be told either to round to the whatever hundredth or tenth or how many decimal points to keep. So in this case, I want to round to the nearest hundredth. Now that means here are my tenths, here is my hundredths. So I want to round right here. So I'm only going to use 2 decimals. So to do that, I look at the next number, and I'm going to circle that. If that next number is 5 or bigger, then we add 1 to that last digit. If it's not, we just leave it. So in this case, since it's a 4, we're just going to round that to 72.37. And often when we write that, we'll write it as approximately. It's kind of an equal sign that looks a little wavy, like it's been out in the sun too long. Now if I wanted to round to the nearest tenth, that's right here. So I would look to the next digit, which is a 7. Since 7 is bigger than 5, I'm going to add 1 to the 3. That would make it 72.4. So we'd say it's approximately 72.4 for rounding to the nearest tenth. And every number after that place we just drop. So that's how we round. Let's take a look at this. If I wanted to divide these two, and then I want to round to 3 decimal places. So we're putting 3 into 3.74. So 3 goes into 3 once. I'm leaving 0. I bring down my 7. Now my decimal point was right there, so that's where my decimal point goes. My answer. 3 goes into 7, well, not evenly, but it goes in twice. That'll give me 2 times 3 is 6. It leaves me 1. Bring down the 4 is 14. 3 again doesn't go evenly into 14, but 3 times 4 is 12, which is a little less than 14. So that gives me 12, which is 2. Now remember, there's as many zeros after this number as you want to put down. So when I run out of digits, we just keep adding a 0 at the end here. So how many times does 3 go into 20? Well, it doesn't go evenly again, but it goes 6 times. And notice I'm at 3 decimal places already. So 3 times 6 is 18. That leaves me a 2. Bring down another 0, and you'll start to see a pattern here. Again, how many times does 3 go into 20? Well, 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Which leaves me a 2. Wait, this has been happening for a while. And what will happen is this will just keep going on. The 6 will keep repeating. Now, for our purposes, we want to round this to 3 decimal places. So we want to round to 1, 2, 3 right here. So really, any number after that, I just need 1 more digit after that to determine whether I need to round up or down. Or in other words, add 1 to the 6 or just leave it as a 6. And in this case, since the number after the thousands place is a 6, we're going to add 1 to that. And so we would say this is approximately 1.247, rounded to 3 decimal places. So when you're asked to round, remember when you're dividing, we usually just go to 1 extra decimal place, and that's all we need. And then we can stop doing our division. We don't need to keep going and keep going and keep going. Now what happens when I have a decimal or a division statement such as this one, where they're both decimals? And remember, another way of writing this would be like this: 5.643 divided by 0.03. Now, we don't like our divisor, in other words, the number that we're dividing by, to be a decimal. So that's the one that we're worried about most. So I want to make this into a whole number. Now to do that, I'm going to have to move the decimal over 3 times, or twice, which is like multiplying by 100. And so we're going to have to do the same thing to the top. So if I move this one over twice, once, twice, I move this one over twice. And so this would be 564.3 over 3. And now I can do that division. So I would write it this way. And this should give me exactly the same answer, because what we've done is we've turned this into another equivalent fraction, different format, but same value. And so now I just do this division. 3 goes into 500 once. That's leaving me a 2. Bring down my 6. So I have 26 tens. 3 goes into 26 not evenly, but 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 9 would be too big. That would be 27. So 24. Bring down a 2. Okay, 3 goes into 24 8 times exactly. 0. So I bring down my 3. Now remember, that's where my decimal was, so that's where my decimal goes there. And 3 goes into 3 once. Nothing left over. So my answer would be 188.1. Okay, one other thing we need to talk about. What happens if we're dividing by a number such as 100 or 10 or 1,000, what I call a power of 10, anything that has a 1 and then a whole bunch of zeros after it? Now I'm going to do it the long way, and this isn't the way I want you to do it. But I want to show you what happens here if we do it the long way. We've got 100 into 8.74, and remember there's as many zeros here as I want to put afterwards. Hopefully I don't need them all. Now, how many times does 100 go into 8? Well, it doesn't. 8's too small. So think of 87. That's still too small. Now, 874 isn't that small, so it would be 8 times. When I multiply by the 8, 8 times 100 is 800. Now I subtract those, and I get 74, and I'm going to bring down a 0. How many times does 100 go into 740? Well, it goes in 7 times. That will give me 7 times 100 is 700. That'll leave me with 40. Bring down the 0. How many times does 100 go into 400? Well, it goes in 4 times, which leaves me with nothing. And so I'm all done. There's no remainder of our run out of numbers other than 0, so I'm done. Now, what you'll notice is take a look at the original question and take a look at the answer. What you'll notice is if I take my original number, 8.74, and I move my decimal over once, twice, I get the answer. So instead of doing it this way, what I consider to be the long way, what I want you to remember is anytime you are dividing by a power of 10, the decimal point is moved as many places to the left as there are zeros in the power of 10. So if I was to redo this and say instead of dividing by 100, I was dividing by 1,000, I would move the decimal place over 3 times as opposed to twice. If I was only dividing by 10, I move the decimal over once because there's 1 0 in 10.